transformational projects with business leaders to change what they do, how they do it, and how their organization does it. Will you please welcome Garvin Callan?
Great. Anton, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I just need to find a clicker if it's up here. This may be it underneath here. Is this the... Yep, got it. Great. Anton, thank you very much for the introduction. Good afternoon. Thank you very much to Brokers Ireland for having me here. Are you well? Yes, great. It's lovely. I'm really looking forward to the next half an hour or so to having a conversation with you about advice reimagined. I mean, as Minister Troy said, there's never been a more important time for advice, and we need to think about how we bolster and prepare advice for the next era and the next generation. So we're going to see and have a discussion about it. I'm going to share with you my perspectives, my work in many ways of working with organizations and leaders for how do we think about how digital and technology is reshaping the world, reshaping businesses serving the world, and how together do we think with technology to create new value. So this is about how do we, revitalize advice and how do we maintain and in fact grow and deepen relevance in the marketplace. So that's kind of just to give a bit of context. Hopefully that will meet your appetite for the afternoon. I'm not going to do the boring kind of who am I slide. I'm going to just take a different approach at maybe sharing what I do and how I do it. So my day today started off an early call this morning. That's a cow from Switzerland, so it wasn't with the cow. It was with a Swiss insurance company that's actually integrating with another Swiss insurance company. So I'm helping them with a conversation about how to integrate organizations. That was very early call. Then I sat out in Ashtown in Teagasc with the prepared consumer foods. You can see a lady putting some sprouts into a broiler. And I'm working with that industry to help them think through where will prepared consumer foods be and how do we make that industry a success into the future. Then I jumped into the car, went into Trinity Business School, spent some time with some MBAs and talking to them about, transformation in business. Then I hopped on the bike, got here, brilliant to be here. You are having your lunch, looking forward to the conversation. And then later on, I'm going to spend some time with Nucleo. So I'm on the board of a data analytics firm that's scaling fast, and we're building some new product. And then tonight, I'm going to spend a little time working with Dublin Simon. I like to do a little bit of giving back. I sit on some boards. But what do I do day to day? I spend my time with leaders trying to figure out where we are, what the future looks like, and where do we want to go in that landscape. And that's advice. It's business advice. It's transformational advice. I want to try and bring that to life a little bit more. So advice to me has been, it's been part of my DNA. After being at Bolton Street and training as a geosurveyor and figuring out it wasn't for me in the early 90s. In 1992, I got my first role with Irish Life, out collecting the debit in Ballymun. So that's an old picture of Ballymun. I went out on my push bike. It was a summer job. And they said to me, Garvin, you seem like you can yap away to people. Do you want to give sales a little go? So I started and I became a financial advisor. And let me just say this. I so believe in the work that you do, that we do, and the importance of advice. And the crystallization of that for me was that little check, the first serious illness claim I paid out to a gentleman called Christy and his family. He had 6 kids and he got serious illness. I was kind of 2 years into my role. I'm sure many of you have that experience of, when the advice that you gave them brought them a solution at a time of just unbelievable kind of disturbance, and you really see the value of what you do. And I know you've had a huge conversation about the value of advice, but I think it's in moments like that when it really comes to life. And I want to keep the ember of that alive. How do we make sure that we deliver that kind of value to clients and be at the heart of not just sustaining the economy, the environment, and the people around us, our clients, but how do we help them to push on and go further? And technology for me has been, just as important and has also been in my heart, but has also captured my imagination in my time working in financial services. So, in the 1990s, when I was on the push bike and I sold my first policies, we had paper rate cards, if you recall. And then we moved to little Casio-like devices, and we moved to buttons to calculate the premiums. And then gradually the world moved to dumb phones and to smartphones. And now we just have so many ways to engage, to calculate, and to bring and build our propositions to market. But at the heart of it, I think what I've always found compelling is that technology can be used to make life just that little bit more simpler, that little bit more productive, and I really like to think a little bit more valuable and a little bit happier. So I want to try and unpack that a little bit more with you as we go through the talk this afternoon. But before I do, I want to just position in your minds the importance, nay, the necessity of harnessing technology and digital. So the last slide that I showed you kind of just showed kind of 35 years of technology evolution, and it's been quite significant. But we need to remember that as humans, we've been the alpha beast, haven't we? I mean, we've roved the planet for 300,000 years, and we've been successful because our intelligence has allowed us to harness technology to be better. That's what advice is all about. And we harness caves, we harness fire, we harness spears and wood and then metal. And all the time, we work to use these technologies to be better. But here's the thing. For about 290,000 years, we lived in caves. We were hunters. And we are conditioned to expect change to happen very, very, very slowly. It's only about 10,000 years ago that we became farmers. Why did we become farmers? Well, we got better, right? So some say we killed all the beast, maybe, but very definitely we learned how to systemize animals, and we learned how to domesticize them, and we learned how to industrialize. But that was only 10,000 years ago in a 300,000 lifetime. And it's only in the last 300 years that we've learned as a beast ourselves to harness virtual power. First steam, then electricity. And only 60 years ago, in the timeline of our existence, have we learned how to invest in and convert our products and services from the physical world into code, into the digital world, to virtualize fully our products and services. And here's the thing, we're only doing that for the last 60 years, even 40 years, even 20 years, like the chart I've shown you recently. And that's important. Why? Because in our psyche, we are now experiencing and starting to feel exponential change in our world, because this technology that we're using is doubling in power. They used to say every 2 years. It's close now to every year. This technology is doubling in power, and it's equipping us with a new world, but perhaps it's presenting us with a bit of a new realm that sometimes we find a little bit hard to cater with and to grasp and to maybe harness. So I want to do just a little thing to just share with you the difference between 300,000 years of linear thinking, of moving at incremental, versus this idea of exponential thinking. Because you've got to be able to think as fast as the technology is moving, if you accept that premise, okay? So if we do linear counting, like we all love to count money, right? So if I count money, and I do on one side linear and one exponential, just to help us understand the quantum of change that we are now experiencing. So a linear count, 10 counts, 1, 2, 3, goes to 10. If I do 10 exponential counts, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32. After 10 counts, I get to, I won't do it out and test a guess, 512. So it's kind of interesting. There's a bit of a difference between 10 and 512. But the fun is only starting there. Because if I keep going on a linear and I do 20, 1 to 11, 12, 13, but if I keep going exponentially from 512, 1,024, etc., right? Where do I get to after 20 counts? I get to 500,000. Now it becomes really interesting. If I keep going, 30 versus half a billion, apologies, and 40 versus half a trillion. Right? Half a trillion is the GDP of this country, right? So what's the concept here? Technology is growing exponentially. The power of technology is increasing. It's doubling its ability to process and to deliver results on an annual basis. And we have been conditioned to think linearly. So we're feeling a little bit of tension around this new technology and how do we harness it and what does it mean for the world around us. So it's a necessity, therefore, for us to think how do we harness this technology at an exponential rate? Therefore, how do we move our businesses forward at an exponential rate so that we can keep pace with the technology change that's happening around us? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? That's the first concept I wanted to leave you with. And the next one I wanted to talk to you about was, well, actually, in this fourth and into the fifth industrial revolution, I call them the first customer revolution and the holistic revolution. We're seeing a difference in how organizations, leaders, and inventors, innovators are approaching how to use the technology. So, technology in the industrial revolutions was to use for what? Industrial revolution. It was to build faster factories. It was to build, faster speed to market. It was to enable globalization and so on. But something very different happened when the smartphone arrived, which is kind of like 20 years after the web arrived. And the 40-year piece is around, the web is around for 40 years. Smartphones are kind of with us now for nearly 20 years. Hard to believe it's that long. It seems like yesterday, but they very definitely are. And they have shifted, the internet, smartphones, but in fact, mobile platforms, analytics, and cloud technology, a combination of technologies, has crafted a new way to start about building business value. And it's from the market back in and it's from advice back in rather than industry out. Because the prior industrial revolutions were about making us faster and quicker, about getting product to market. But some of these brands here, they're actually all of these brands here, they're all advice brands and they all use these technologies to bring advice into your life to make it simpler, more productive, or happier. So let's maybe flick through a couple of those. Audi, in 2010, Audi started with the first digital showrooms. And what's different about a digital showroom? What's different about a digital showroom is there's no cars in a digital showroom. You walk in and you're greeted by a concierge and they say, "Hey, Garvin, tell us a bit about yourself." And you kind of go, "Where's all the cars?" And they say, "Don't worry about all the cars. We're going to show you what we're doing about the future of mobility." So, Garvin, 2 kids, I've got a dog, etc. What do you work at? Well, business consultant, da 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 da. All of a sudden, on screens the size of that, what's appearing behind me? My Audi. Not the Audi that they would have sold me, the yellow one, the A3. You know the way walk into a store and you're just going to get sold the product that they're going to present to you. It's not about selling the product that they have in the store. The experience is about how do we help Garvin figure out what's the right Audi for Garvin. And they say, things like, "Well, what color was your last couple of cars, Garvin?" And you say, "Well, black." And they say the black one appears. And they say, "But," and they kind of wait. And they say, "Oh, but red is kind of in my mind for my next car." And the red Audi appears. You get the idea, don't you? Right? But it's not just that you're designing your Audi in a carless showroom. What's happening is at the end of the conversation, they say, "Do you like that? Do you like the look of that car?" And you say, "Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't mind having a go with that car." And then they say, "We'll run it up to you at the weekend. Take it over the weekend, see if you like it, and then let's talk after that." So no push, very personal approach to selling, but it's using digital to get into my heart and unlock my dreams as opposed to put onto me the car they have in the lot. So the kind of the commercial results for Audi have been phenomenal. They've 2x in terms of sales from leads for people who walk into those stores, and they've 3 and 4x in terms of cross sells. You're buying the kit, you're buying the leather, etc., because they're changing it all in real time for you to see it. And as I kind of go across some of the others, Disney. When you go on Disney, it's not like going to the telly anymore. You get presented with, "Here's things for you, Garvin. Here's what's next for you because you watched. This is what you should look at next." Like the world is just alive and thriving with advice, and organizations are using digital technologies to help you, me, us reimagine what we want, and build what we're striving to get towards, and that helps us on a journey to deliver that. And that's where the magic is. IKEA, another fantastic organization. If you use IKEA, use their augmented reality app. I don't know if anybody has tried it, but you go home, you put on your phone, you scan the room, and you start to look and see what the furniture would look like in your room. So you're becoming an interior designer, you're advising yourself. Very clever. IKEA don't have the same returns issues that they have as they did before, because now you're sure of what you're going to buy because you've kind of tried it out at home. And not only are they doing it on phones, but they're doing it in virtual reality now as well. The last one is Airbnb. Massive shift in their business model in the last couple of weeks. But they've figured out that their business is not about connecting people who want rooms and people who have rooms. That's the basics, right? They've started to ask, why are people traveling? And what do people want when they travel? And that this idea, people want to belong. It's not there, but the concept is that people want to belong. People want to do things, and people want to experience the places they're going to, whether it's for business or whether it's for personal. And now you can go and book a masseuse. Now you can go and book a chef. Now you can go and book a car through Airbnb. The basic model is still to help buyers and sellers share rooms. But on top of that, they're building these services with this idea of belonging, because that's what they really deeply understand is where people want to go. So there's two big things going on there. One is technology pace is moving at an exponential rate. We've got to be on that. The second thing is how we think about deploying technology is not just for industrial prowess. It's to build, it's to deliver advice, it's to create personalized experiences that are composite, that are whole. And if we do that, the opportunity is there to command a premium, because all these businesses are commanding premiums in the marketplace, their price, and they're reducing their cost to be at market because they don't have to manage physical infrastructure and physical environments. So it's creating jaws of value and incredible experience for the customer, which allows them to create the jaws of value. Does that make sense? I just wanted to introduce those two concepts in the conversation. And then you've got this other big great debate going on, don't you? Oh, it's all digital, or it's all physical. It's well, what is the truth and what is the reality of that? You've interesting things like the cosmetics business. They're trying to become super convenient. So you can now go on Elizabeth Arden, you can go on the website and you can experience the shop and so on. And it's kind of working, but what's missing is that lady on the right-hand side in the store who helps you just try and give you that comfort and that confidence and that sense of belief that sometimes you need to maybe go an extra little step. And the same thing, Gemini and Google, they're trying to put technology into, phones, watches, and into glasses that will kind of lead you around the world. But it doesn't. I've tried it. It doesn't just replace, the guide who might hold your hands on the street of Berlin or down in Rio de Janeiro and bring you around a corner and tell you a story about a bar. It just doesn't have that intimacy and it doesn't have that sense. So where do I sit on this? I sit in a world where, I think people feel like that sometimes when they think of these, the exponential rate of technological change. I think they sit like that when they think, my God, what does it mean for us? And I think that's how our clients feel. That's maybe how we feel. That's how the industry feels sometimes. Fear not. I think there's a resolution. And for me, there is a sweet spot that I've seen struck. In my own experience, I've developed businesses around this, and I work in businesses that develop this. And it's around the harmony, and it's around building vitality. It's the combination and it's the fusion of getting digital and humans to play their respective roles, but ultimately so that we can continue in our 300,000-year journey of human betterment. Because all the time in the past, we've just used technology to be better. We just need to continue to think about how can we use this technology to be better. So, what can technology do? Well, for me, it always always just creates capacity, and it's always on. So if I think about what technology is doing now for advisors, and whether it's in banks and mortgages, whether it's in insurance and so on, and whether it's in all those other, and I particularly chose non-industry examples just to kind of, freshen our minds a little bit. It's giving us the ability to gather data, right? Gather knowledge. And if we think about what we do at the very heart, how do you give advice? Well, you only can give advice when you have the knowledge. So it's about gathering that data up. And then it's about presenting simulations, hypotheses. Some of you in the room will be using Voyant, maybe all of you. And it's that idea of how do we simulate forward what the future could look like? Well, that's what technology should be doing. It's able to take that data and make calculations and present it with future realities, a bit like Audi does, a bit like IKEA does, etc. And then it's able to, critically, it's able to execute what you choose to do with that simulation and with that advice that sits in behind that. And that execution is where the capacity sits. So it enables deeper insight, deeper calculation with less time spent, and then to execute trades, to execute business, to run processes. That's where the real kind of efficiency magic, and that's how we can reduce the cost of advice. But at the same time, we can glide and we can start to drift towards using technology to prepare, consumer realities. What does that mean? Sorry, silly words on a slide. It basically means, things I should think about doing. Garvin, the kids are 15 and 17 now. You've put a few bob away from them, but, they're going to be going to college for 2 years. Have you just got enough? And have you got enough for long enough? And when you started that savings plan, Garvin, you thought the kids would be going for college for 4 years and then gone, Van Moost. How long do kids stay at home for now? Yeah, we're older longer. A lot longer, or younger longer, sorry. They're staying at home into their 30s now because they can't get houses, etc., etc. We know all those reasons. So, what am I saying? This technology can help us gather data, simulate it, and help us and help the client to see the realities. And if we create that capacity, that always-on capacity, what then we can start doing as humans, we focus on the intimacy. Because that's where we shine, and the machine will not replace us there, not for a long time, right? And it's that in that intimacy, that's really where the fusion of value sits. So that's where we understand the real true context, the emotional journey that our clients are going through. That's where we can really, figure out about how do we, spend time not calculating, but actually spend time in the emotional conversation and really do the planning. How do we coach clients emotionally and psychologically? That for me is where it sits. Getting them to commit to a plan, to simulate that future and helping them stay on track. That's the human job that we need to think about doing. But we can only do it better and greater. We can definitely do it better and greater if we're able to harness the power of technology to do the grunt work so that we can do the emotional work, if that makes sense. And that's vitality. And when I look at the world and look at all these businesses working from the customer back, this room, this profession has always worked from the customer back. So it's not new in that regard. Maybe we're just not using technology as forward and as at the pace at which it's moving. And that's what my encouragement is to you today. I hope I'm not overspending my time. Are we doing okay? Everybody okay? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, great. So a couple of examples, and I always kind of look at the internationals. I'm not going to look at a whole load of fintechs, right? Because we sometimes do that and then they're unproven. These are proven examples, okay? So we think about Vanguard, they have a digital advisor. It's a partner, right? But it talks with the client and with you as an advisor, and it's always on. So it helps you simulate forward a bit like Viant, but it stays on and it tracks the investment portfolio. And as the world changes, or as you change as the client, or as the advisor, you advise the client to change, it's constantly resimulating, updating, and progressing. So for me, this is the kind of the partner approach. So you can use digital in lots of different ways. So you can use it as a partner, not to replace you, we'll come back to that, but definitely as a partner. Morgan Stanley are using next best action, and this is as a prompter. All right. So again, like the example I gave you a couple of minutes ago, you know, that out of the blue call or mail or notification to say, "Hey, Garvin, you've done that kid savings," you know, or you know, rates are changing. It's time we looked at your fixed rates, whatever it is, right? Just giving you those little prompts and pushes. The technology can help us to do that. Morgan Stanley are doing that at scale. There's a little link in the corner of the slide. Look at it afterwards. There's the head of analytics and segmentation in Morgan Stanley talking about how they're using data analytics to accelerate intimacy, right? And what do we want? We need to create intimacy efficiently for practically no effort. We're getting deeper efficiency. So therefore, we're really kind of crafting and harnessing the value overall. And Endow, sorry, that's Fidelity's the next one I want to mention, because Fidelity look at automating the end to end, like right from the AML through to, yes, building the portfolio, doing the fact finding, but right down through to compliance reporting and then recalibrating and rebalancing and so on. So what does that do? That just creates space and time for advisors to spend more time in the emotional conversation, making sure we give people confidence, we keep them on track. Because the more the world is changing around us, the more we need to do that because they're feeling that emotional turbulence as they run their businesses or as they're in their families or as they're, you know, helping their kids, you know, carve a path in this new world. And Endow us, I mean, it was a really interesting one. They're out in Singapore. It's a fintech, but it's a proven one. They've got over 100,000 clients, only 15 advisors managing them. Like it's a pure digital play, and they have built the facilities and the infrastructure for people to self-advise, and they're there when people really, really, really need it. And they're you can imagine what that business model looks like in terms of acquisition, but also in terms of efficiency costs. I came across in Dallas when I was doing some research. McKinsey done a really nice paper. Again, it's here. The link's at the bottom on Dallas. And I just think it's interesting to look at different markets. And if we look at Asia, you know, there's a whole developing economy, right? So we've this new affluent kind of cadre which are coming into the market. So they're new wealth. And we're finding generally that the more wealth and the new wealth are early and faster adopters of digital solutions. Over 75% of the money out there is kind of affluent and mass market of the new money. So that's why it's interesting to look at that market. But 80% of respondents, you know, to McKinsey surveys are saying they want a digital solution. Now, they want a human, but they want to start with digital. They want to self-serve. They want to find themselves, you know, self-confidently, self-advising for as far as they can do that, but they always need a human. And that's why they've got that lovely model. Really interestingly, their willingness to pay is diving because they see that digital is creating a new business model, a new floor of economy. And they're saying back that they're kind of only willing to pay 20% of existing advisory fees. Now that feels a bit disruptive at the same time, doesn't it? So there's opportunity and necessity in everything that I'm showing you. Okay, everyone doing okay? All right so far? Yeah? Okay, brilliant. Excellent stuff. So that's just what's going on out there. And I mean, ultimately, you know, I get the picture that advice with this technology is being revolutionized, not just evolved, it's been revolutionized. I mean, you know, technology is allowing advisors to really move to a holistic kind of pattern with their clients. And it's like private banking democratized. And that's what technology does. It democratizes services. So it allows advisors to ultimately build confidence. And how do you build confidence? Well, you know, it's maybe looking at your fast money, your money that you're spending every day in your current account. And are you getting the right kind of balance with slow money? And that's the money you're putting away for the things you want to do in the future. But of course, we all share money. We've too much money in deposits, according to Minister Troy. So we need to get that more into shared investment, without doubt, right? But as we think about sharing that money, we also look for that money to be shared with us. We borrow. Right. So how do we look at fast money, slow money? How do we look at borrowed money? And of course, the advice just happens on the outside: gather and diagnose and plan. But building confidence is about building a picture, a composite picture of where you are with all your money, where you're going today, tomorrow, and beyond with all your money. And the technology, as per Endowus and these other developments that are happening, they're facilitating that. And here's the thing: we kind of need to be on the wave. Uh, I last week was preparing, and a new AI was going to come up today. So Duncan's here. He's going to do a little bit of chat later on. He's going to talk about AI. But I just put a little bit of a prompt into ChatGPT because it's interesting to check. Can the AI do it yet? So that's my prompt going in there, and it's really interesting. It starts to play back. Have you done this, advisors? Really interesting exercise to do. Just put in a little scenario, give it a prompt, say who it is. It starts talking you through your next moves, simplified financial spreadsheets. It actually starts, so as you prompt it forward, it starts to frame out, the 10 modules of advice that's flying through it there. Try it yourself. Ask it at the end, will it give you financial advice? It'll say no, but it will help you think through what you need to think about and construct and what you need to gather in order to get financial advice. See, it even gives you a little financial forecast spreadsheet and it expands and so on and so forth. So more digital is more informed. But I go back to my supposition. Would I act on a financial plan based on what ChatGPT will do for me? You know, do I need somebody to sit with me and say, you put that in right, we got that right, the calculations look good, the human factor, the emotional factor, the intimate factor? I definitely think we need that. But I think for us to, really have prowess, I think we need to really harness this technology to release us in that regard, And I think it's about building competence. So people are going to start using technology, whether we like it or not, or whether we give it to them or not. People are going to start using this technology. Look, I'm in there hacking through it, right? But when I give that a prompt and ask it to give me advice, it's not giving me gobbledygook. It actually looks pretty compelling. So it's being trained in the background and it's figuring out what advice looks like. The thing that we need to do is at the bottom here, let's let digital do be busy doing the processing, the gathering, the transacting, the reporting. And we should be spending our time pushing up the emotional confidence of our clients. For when they're young, they're free and easy, they're figuring out the world. But, we need to build financial acumen so that they're confident to move forward and build a life plan. As they go through their journey, you can read it in the background. I won't read it all for you. How do you strike the balance between fast, slow, and shared money? That's the ultimate challenge for midlifers. And then when you get to the end, how do you optimize the accumulation curve? Again, technology can do huge heavy lifting. So we as the advisor can spend our time pushing up confidence and creating value and revitalizing the very relevance of what we do. It's always what we've done. We just need to think and reimagine about doing it in a new way. So, when I put so what does all this change mean? It usually means exhilaration and anxiety all at the same time. That's what a roller coaster does, right? It is a kind of a roller coaster that we're on. And sometimes it flips upside down. It gets even worse, right? And we might be getting at that stage in the presentation. So it's time to me to come to a close. What to do? What would we do? Well, that's a whole kind of talk in itself. But very simply, if we want to connect and care and coach and contribute and ultimately be congratulated for being that partner along the world, if you haven't started, commit. How do you commit? Well, you start connecting with people who can actually take you on the journey if you haven't gone on the journey, or take you on a faster journey if you're not on the journey already, because the pace is definitely picking up. So look at your customer base, your client base. Understand, is it more advice time you want? Is it more efficiency and productivity time? I mean, we have options on what we want to do. But the most important thing is to commit. And then to connect. I mean, your technology partner, if your technology partner today is not having this conversation, I'd sack them. They should be having this conversation with you, showing you what these technology tools can do for you. For your Microsoft, Copilot, all these, the tools are phenomenal now, and they're just becoming so easy to use. You probably have them at your hands. The thing is let's try and figure out how to use them. And if you want to really start, take it one step at a time. Don't get overzealous, don't get over ambitious. Like pick off a pilot, pick off a project for how can we use AI, or how can we use some of these new tools, and how can we start making our productivity better so that we can make our intimacy much more pronounced. And ultimately, it's about building capacity, your own interest, your own enthusiasm for what technology can do and how it can kind of revitalize that advice. I encourage you to do that. But my experience is, you'll need help. Get help. That's not a pitch for me, by the way. Just, reach out, there's a community here. As a community, work together, find and build the bench that's going to help you go on the journey, because that's mostly what I think what you need to do. It's been a pleasure to be with you and kind of share those thoughts and share those perspectives. I'll leave you in the final words of Albert Einstein, which is like the measure of intelligence and ultimately your success has always been our ability to change. So I hope you're encouraged, and I hope you see the opportunity and the vitality that sits within using technology to embrace intimacy, to create productivity, and ultimately leave impact and better value in the world around us. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you kindly. Garvin Callan, folks. Thank you, Garvin. We're going to pick up with the theme that Garvin has left, that thing of intimacy, because it's something of a theme throughout the day. That capacity to empathize, to catalyze action in your clients, to build relationships, to build